some interesting developments from freaking Zack Snyder's Justice League. Every week there's more stuff. You know, a couple weeks ago we talked about Jared Leto. Then there was the news about Deathstroke. And then this week, Mr. Snyder puts out a tease. He veroed an image of Batman and Catwoman and mentioned that he once had plans for Batman and Catwoman, and that if he would have cast Catwoman, he was going to cast Carla Gugino. So that got a lot of people talking because, I mean, she's a great actress and she would make a phenomenal Selena Kyle. But that got people wondering, like, is he going to try to incorporate that into Justice League? Because it's just interesting timing. We know that he's in full swing production. He's doing additional photography. He's doing all this stuff for his version of Justice League right now. Why this sudden detour talking about Catwoman? And that got me thinking. You know, I went down a little sort of theory spiral on Twitter the other night, thinking about, like, if this thing is really going to have Jared Leto's Joker, Joe Manganiello's Deathstroke, and possibly some sort of allusion to Gugino's Catwoman, then that means that this Zack Snyder's Justice League mini-series event is one of two things. Or rather, this news is one of two things. This either means that this is going to be a very Batman-centric story, right? Because you can't just give all these characters like the, you know, short shrift. If you're going to bring in the Joker, and if you're going to bring in the guy who was originally part of the end scene sequence because he stands for, you know, Batman's future enemy. So if you're going to show his most classic enemy and the enemy you were building towards for the future, and you're going to make, you know, there's going to be a little bit fleshing out of what happened with the dead Robin in the DCEU. And you're going to mention something about Bruce's past relationship with Catwoman. That means that this is going to be another very Batman-heavy experience, which I don't mind, by the way. But people argue that BVS was very Batman-heavy. Right now, with all of these characters potentially being involved, this sounds to me like Zack Snyder's Justice League is going to do that again, where Batman really is kind of like the main character, or they're not in there for that long. And what they're really doing is setting up a Ben Affleck Batman series. That's kind of the other way I see to make sense of all this. It's either going to be that Justice League is very Batman centric and possibly very bloated with outside elements, or it's not bloated at all. And those things are just going to be teased at for future movies. You know, so either way, I'm very curious to see which way this goes. And the more I think about it, and this was all part of the theory spiral, is that there is a fairly sort of obvious Batman arc in there somewhere, if all these characters are involved. Because if we're getting Zack Snyder's Justice League with a pair of iconic Bat villains in it and allusions to his tormented past. And then I am of the opinion that we're going to get the Ayer cut. You know, we're going to get David Ayer's Suicide Squad, and it's going to exist in the same canon as Zack Snyder's Justice League. This is my hunch. This is what I think is going on. So if we're going to have Zack Snyder's Justice League in September of 2021, then I think we're very likely to get David Ayer's Suicide Squad at some point in 2022. And remember, that film in many ways was a direct sequel to BVS because it's directly connected to all of that canon. It's directly connected to all of that story. And it involves Ben Affleck's Batman. You've got Jared Leto in there. So if Jared Leto is reprising Joker for Justice League, I don't think it's crazy to think that he could reprise it for David Ayer's Suicide Squad. Although honestly, it doesn't sound like he'd even have to, right? because Ayer and Leto have alluded to the fact that 90% of what he shot for Suicide Squad didn't make the movie. So I guess all they would really have to do is reintegrate all of the Joker scenes, and, maybe that would be enough to flesh out whatever sort of dynamic he has with Ben Affleck's Batman. But then in 2023, you have a Batman series. You have Zack Snyder's Justice League to sort of imply certain things. You have David Ayer's Suicide Squad to flesh in certain other elements of this, so that in 2023, you could actually have the Batman story that this has all been building towards. That's just kind of, that's my fanboy wet dream right there. That is my thing that, like, if that's how this all, pans out, it would be a pretty phenomenal coup for Batman fans, for fans of that version of the DCEU, and it would really give HBO Max a very sort of unique selling point to fans, where there's this whole sort of alternate DC Batman-centric world that you could check out on HBO Max. And that's just something that I kind of wanted to put out there because, again, if we're going to have Leto's Joker and Manganiello's Deathstroke and possibly Gugino's Catwoman in Justice League, I don't think that there's any way that this is just a standalone event. I think this is setting up some other stuff. That's just me.